understanding. Tuesdays, 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. here on New Era TT Radio, Net Radio.
Welcome to Drive Time Exchange. As rubber hits the road, hard talk meets great music. Monday to Thursday, 4 to 6 p.m. on Net Radio, taking you above and beyond.
Foreigners always asking me why in Trinidad people so happy what to do. Man, I had to tell them the truth. I say a man could sleep until 10 o'clock, get up and still he ain't late for work where he hurry for. He getting transport in front the door. And this poor couple, they going whole day and unpaid, they still draw a big fat pay if they like. They could call a big strike. So I tell them sweet, sweet Trinidad, first I love this country bad. I don't want to leave at all. Ever since I small, look up all in sweet, sweet Trinidad. Brother, first I'm feeling glad. When I'm dead, please bury me in the center of the city. Yeah, tell you. We got we big oil field just in south. We have all kind of thing to talk about, no regret. You just have to get up and get. And anytime things a little bad, man, you have a garden in your backyard and no doubt the food almost in your mouth. We got women, color, class or creed, any kind of a woman that you need, you could bet. The sweetest woman you could get. Sweet, sweet Trinidad, first I don't want to leave at all. Ever since I'm small, look up all in sweet, sweet Trinidad. Brother, first I'm feeling glad. When I death is bury me in the center of the city.
Now that is like one of my all-time favorite songs there, the music of the funny, yeah, sweet, sweet Trinidad. And of course, that is where we are at. And we are coming to you streaming all around the globe, Trinidad and Tobago. This is New Era TT Radio, the heartbeat of the Caribbean. And of course, yes, taking you above and beyond. We welcome everybody inside of the Drive Time Exchange. And of course, inside of our Drive Time Exchange, we are led by none other than journalist extraordinaire, Tony Fraser. So, Tony, good afternoon to you. How are you doing? You might have to unmute your mic. I think I muted you just now.
Yeah, hearing me now?
Yes, I am. I
Okay,
yes,
wonderful.
I muted you a little bit.
Okay, yeah. So that yeah, we are on this afternoon. However, we have not been able to bring you. We will not be able to bring you our planned guests, the novelist Earl Lovelace. He's not able to make it again this afternoon, and we are going to rearrange for another day. A very important interview with perhaps the leading Trinidad and Tobago novelist of the period, that spans 50 years or so, and he has put out quite a lot of work. So we're going to rearrange for that. Of course, it was a little bit too late to get someone else to fill that space, but we are going to chat a little bit, Sir Charles, and
Yes, we will.
both of us can chat about matters. Today is an important day. The day after the former Prime Minister made the statement, which I'm sure that you're fully aware of, that in and out of Antigua last week or week before, he was stalled for some time at the counter of the immigration, and eventually, according to him, it was because he was on some list of the Interpol, the International Police Association, which is the one that keeps tabs on people moving across the globe, people moving from country to country, and monitoring these things, monitoring people. And of course, he made allegations that the present government had to be involved in this. Not only the present government, but the police service, knowing, of course, that it's the local police service, I presume, directed by the government of the day, whoever is in has that responsibility. Uh, it's the institution which will make certain reports to um, international countries and immigration offices and so on, and those are the ones who will set up barriers. Chalu, it's a way of, I suppose, monitoring people, people who are unwanted, people who are wanted for some crime or the other, from moving freely from one state to the other state. So that's a claim of Dr. Keith Rowley, the former Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, and he was at a news conference in which he released the information, very upset about him having served the country for 40 plus years and having never got himself into any police difficulties, being put on some kind of international list. But according to the police commissioner, and we haven't had a word from the government, but according to the police commissioner, and indeed the prime minister made some statement to the effect that they are not involved, they have not made any such report to Interpol, and therefore they take no responsibility for it. And indeed, questions have been raised about whether the veracity of the statement and the claim made by former Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley. So it's a kind of going around and going around there, Charles.
It is actually, and it has been creating a lot of conversation across the board. And, people are, are divided as to how they see this whole situation playing out. Is it a situation whereby something genuinely happened, or is it that the former prime minister took something out of context, may not have understood, but I
Right.
mean, he had a few days to think it over, or
Absolutely.
if he's just playing up for public sympathy, that he's not in the limelight anymore. They say that politicians can't, there's something in the back of their minds that keeps them and wants them to always experience what they have in the politics. So when people are not paying them attention, they try to get attention. So
Right.
all those kinds of conversations are outside there right now.
The thrill of office and being on the stage all the time, they can't walk away from it sometimes. But nevertheless, Dr. Rowley is an experienced politician, as indicated, 50 years or so in the politics, has been prime minister, has been deputy prime minister, senior government minister, and a number of other positions held, a number of other high office positions held in the state sector and so on. And one would think that he would not raise such an alarm if there weren't some kind of truth in it, according to his understanding of what is possible. Now, I haven't seen it yet, but the local media, they have an important responsibility in this matter. It should be a simple thing to call up the Antigua authorities to find out if there is any base for truth in the contention made by Dr. Rowley, the former Prime Minister, because that will inevitably be the last line of defense, as it were, uh, to make a determination about whether or not this really happened or whether it's a fabrication for one reason or the other. I would think, Charles, without making any determination myself on the matter, because we simply don't have enough information at this point in time, that the experienced politician that Dr. Rowley is, uh, he would be really going out on a limb to make an accusation of such a nature, knowing that it can be easily checked with the immigration in Antigua. So, if in fact it's a fabrication, he is really setting himself up for some kind of difficult period ahead, and a kind of ignominy that will go over his whole political life for allegedly, and I don't know what the truth is, allegedly fabricating something like this. He has too much to lose in the matter, Sir Charles.
Mhm. Well, as I said, I'm not too sure, why, but even going through the press conference that he had,
Yeah,
there are some things that he spoke about, because he went through Antigua, went on, I think, to Montserrat.
yeah,
He was flagged then, but he was not detained or anything like that. And
yeah,
then he went on, and in coming back, he stopped again by a different person.
yeah, yeah.
The interesting thing about it this time is that the person who stopped him this time, when he asked the question, he said that the person spoke to like their supervisor,
Mhm.
who indicated that this is like a mistake or something to that effect.
Mhm.
um, and he asked the question, so if it's a mistake, the person who they are looking for, because I think they said the person may be somebody, but the person have a different date of birth than his.
Yeah. Mhm.
Right, so maybe the person has the same name but different date of birth. And he asked the question, if that's the case, who would want this, who would be looking out for this individual, and he was told that it was the Antigua police that were interested in this particular individual.
Yeah. Yeah, and I would hope that any security officer or any security institution, meaning the immigration authorities in Antigua, will not make such a mistake with somebody who was a former prime minister, somebody who was at the head of CARICOM at a couple points in time during his tenure. And it's not like if I am walking, you and I walking through the airport, Chalo, and somebody pick on us and mistake us for XYZ. Uh,
Hmm.
this is a former prime minister, well known across the Caribbean. He has crisscrossed the Caribbean all the time. Well, I don't know if he still has his diplomatic passport. I think if I'm remembering correctly, he said it was an ordinary passport. I don't know if when a prime minister goes out of office, if his red passport is taken from him. So all of those matters have to be concluded upon. And you're right, Charlo, in terms of saying, well, what happened to this, inquiry, to put it in a nice frame. After all, if and according to Dr. Rowley, the detention was for some quite a period. He did not indicate how long, but it was not a simple mistake of going in the back and finding out what is the name of the individual and coming back and saying, sorry, sir, we have somebody with your initials or your name, and we simply apologize for any detention or, that we have had with you. So I would presume that by now the local media would have got some kind of response from the Antiguan authorities to clarify this matter. Makes sense.
Yeah, I would have thought something like that would have happened immediately. I actually thought that our um, our foreign affairs and CARICOM head, who's the person right now, Mr. Sobers,
Yes.
I thought he would probably have made that call today. you know.
Absolutely. So maybe it has happened. We haven't had the evening news just yet, but nevertheless, if somebody gets a story, whether it's to confirm or deny, You can't wait for 7 o'clock, or surely you can't wait for the newspapers being published tomorrow. That is something that has to run through the day. So at this point in time, I think I will assume that it has not been done, or they have not got clarification one way or the other in this situation. It's not a news story that can hold for any period of time.
No, no,
Too
no.
much is too much is involved. If, of course, somebody in government did it without consultation with the Attorney General, or the Prime Minister, or the Foreign Affairs Minister, then there will be some difficulty. If it's a pure fabrication, well, I'm sure that Dr. Rowley will then have to explain anew how he came about this kind of thing. And I'm sure too that he will have to have a name if you are being questioned in that kind of situation. Charles, I'm sure the normal thing, the absolutely
Of
right
course.
thing to do is to ask the person's name.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that we can expect. There are more legs to this story before we can conclude one way or the other. Very importantly.
I also thought that the government's action towards it would have been more proactive, because even though the prime minister has said that he owes the country an apology, or should apologize, or
Yeah,
something to that effect,
yeah,
um, she didn't divulge any information. Now, if you had checked and you had come up with certain information that you could put in the public domain, that it's not like that because your government is being accused of something, I found that the actions, the response date, should have been a lot different.
yeah. I agree with you, Charlo, that it should have been far more definitive than simply, making a counter accusation against the former prime minister. Sometimes politicians. Incidentally, Charles, if we have anybody who wants to call into the program now and have a chat on this matter or any other matter, we can accommodate that call.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. So people, you can get it on the show wherever you may be. Remember, you can give us a call at 281-1315, and if you're out of the space, and you would have to put 868 before it if you're calling us from any other part of the world. But yeah, you can call us. You can regular call us, or you can WhatsApp call us, and we are willing and will be appreciative if you call us and share your concerns. If you have a different view on this or any other thing is happening in the news, you can call us now. Yeah.
Also, Charles, it should be recognized that the political movement is conflictual. One government has gone out of office, another government has come into office, and typically, in these circumstances, the government who has just come into office will be searching around for all kinds of contentions and alleged corrupt activities that were carried out over the 5 year. Well, in this instance, it's 10 years over the period of the previous government, and there will be accusations flying back and forward, and there will be responses also. We had some response from the former public utilities minister about accusations that he made, and accusations that were made against him. And then he went into some conflictual areas, talking about the ethnic profile of the major state boards which have been announced so far. So all of these matters will well up over a period of time. And the unfortunate thing about these matters, not that I'm saying that if there are corrupt activities which have taken place, they shouldn't be raised. Surely they shouldn't be raised. But you know what the typical kind of raising of such an issue is, or has been,
Mm.
is that accusations have been made without any corroboration, without any evidence, and it's a a mudslinging war between the former government and the present government, and it goes on after every election. It goes on and on. Once there's a change in government, the accusations go between the two sides at the expense of the Trinidad and Tobago, wherein we should be, we in a difficult position. I don't think anyone has to search too far to get the corroboration for that. So the country is in a difficult situation. It has been said so by government and opposition and by independent commentators on the economy and the society and so on. So we're in a difficult situation, and perhaps there will be less tolerance in this time for wild accusations being made one against the other. The time is for serious work on the economy, on the national crime situation. It's something that happens, has been talked about all the time in the media, and therefore we have to pay some attention to it. So that's one of the major stories in the news. I want to talk about another matter which has international implications, Sir Charles, and it has to do with maybe I need to get some things going. So, Chalu, can you take it for a little while? I have to go and search my computer to bring up that matter.
All right, okay, no
That's the
problem.
news.
Yeah, okay, no problem. And people, remember, this is the Drive Time Exchange right here on your NeweraTTRadio Radio. And there are a number of topics, a number of things that are happening outside there. And if you would like to chime in on the conversation, we would welcome you this afternoon. So remember, the lines are open to you, 281-1315. That's 281-1315. And yeah, we'd love to hear from you wherever you may be, whether you're here at home in the Caribbean or any other part of the globe. Remember, we are able to connect with you. You are able to connect with us from wherever you may be, and it will be nice to hear from you people. All right, so many major issues are outside there, and of course, this particular issue with the former prime minister, it is one of the major talking points, and I said in listening to people, there seems to be this split as to how the population itself feels about what has been taking place. And I know you probably listening, you might have a view on it. Yeah, so you can share your view on what is taking place, right? So while Tony gets himself organized,
Yes, I'm ready, Chalu.
All right, no problem. Yes.
Yeah, I want to throw out another issue which may not be very well known amongst listeners. It's an international matter, but one which has serious possibilities for disrupting life in small countries like ours. It has to do with this whole climate change. And that, of course, is not an issue that is not known to viewers and listeners around the world, and indeed in Trinidad and Tobago. It's a whole issue of climate change and what the kinds of disruptions that have been caused because of the industrial nature of the economy of the world today. We are pitching all of these gases into the atmosphere, destroying the atmosphere, and the consequences of that kind of activity, which have been predicted by the scientists, not by reporters and journalists and politicians and so on, but international scientists who have been contracted by the United Nations have talked about that we are destroying this outer layer of the world's atmosphere, hemisphere. Well, there's a word for it somewhere inside there, which doesn't come immediately. But what it is doing is destroying the delicate balance of nature, and therefore There have been a number of conferences. I think there have been 27 of them, international conferences, which have talked about such matters and which have been meeting over a period of time and therefore concerned about it. Now, what is all of that is leading to the fact that tomorrow the ICJ, the International Criminal Court, the International Criminal Jurisdiction, which goes out and deals with international matters, they are supposed to be delivering a judgment because the AOSIS, which is the association of states, small states which are vulnerable in the circumstances. And therefore, the concern is that this advisory, the alliance of small states, uh, which have petitioned the International Court of Justice to make a determination about how the industrial world, in particular, is treating with the situation. And so there is a release that has come out of the AOSIS, as I indicated. It's an advisory opinion which is coming out from the Alliance on the basis of the protests made by the Alliance of Small Island States. And that release, I'm going to read parts of it to you so that our listeners and viewers get an appreciation of what is happening. On Wednesday, 23rd of July, all eyes will be on The Hague as the International Court of Justice delivers its landmark advisory opinion on the obligations of states in respect of climate change. Initiated by small island developing states, this case will resolve questions on countries' responsibilities to protect the environment from the human-induced greenhouse gas emissions, as well as the legal ramification for countries whose actions are causing significant harm to the climate system. So that the court has been asked to make some determination on this matter against those countries which are releasing an overabundance of chemicals into the atmosphere, into what is called the greenhouse gas emissions, and therefore that poses a threat. The advisory opinion is directly linked to the very survival and sustainability of SIDS, that's the small island developing states. It particularly looks at the legal consequences for countries which have harmed the climate system with respect to states, including in particular small island developing states, which, due to their geographical circumstances and levels of development, are injured or specifically affected by or particularly vulnerable to the adverse effects of climate change. And among those effects, it's, some of the small island states are being inundated as the level of water, seawater is increasing, and that has been caused by the glaciers melting and pouring more water into the oceans. And therefore, the fear is, and indeed it's more than fear, it's a scientific prediction that if there is not some cessation of this overabundance of chemicals into the atmosphere, there are serious consequences to come from it. So what has been done is that states led by Vanuatu and the tireless Vanuatu is a group of islands in the Pacific. The New Hebrides, they are called, led by Vanuatu and a tireless group of small island developing states and other developed and developing country partners. This advisory opinion brings to bear the responsibility of countries to urgently accelerate climate action and safeguard vulnerable nations whose fundamental rights are being debilitated by a crisis we did not cause. So the small island states are saying, look, our industrial gases are very minute compared to what the big industrial developers have been putting into the atmosphere for 400 years. If you go back to the Industrial Revolution of the 17th and 18th century, and this new move towards using all kinds of toxic materials in the production of industrial materials, then, Chalu, you create one thing, but that one thing which is great and popular and so on causes damage elsewhere, and that has been what has been happening. So the states are saying that ultimately it is AOSIS, as I have said, that's the small island states, expectations that the outcome of this advisory opinion will foster enhanced accountability and drive support to address the disproportionate impacts of climate change, which our SIDS, small island developing states, are forced to endure. They're saying then that this is not of our making. Islands in the Pacific and elsewhere are being flooded. There are some islands that the water has gone in 2 and 3 miles onto the island. If you're talking about small islands, not the big continents, you're talking about serious matters. Parts of the country have gone underwater. So the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change and the Paris Agreement serve as the essential platforms for global collaboration and efforts to address climate change. The clarification provided by the ICJ opinion is momentous in its potential to enrich these regimes. Greater support can be catalyzed to augment our multilateral cooperation and advance the action we urgently need to keep our world within the 1.5 Celsius global warming limit. That limit was established some time ago, and indeed, the Caribbean countries were very instrumental in arriving and saying that, look, we don't want the temperatures to rise beyond 1.5% over the next period of time. Otherwise, if we cross that threshold, we are going to be in some serious difficulties. So, according to the release, we must reduce global greenhouse gas emissions by 43% by 2030 and reach net zero by 2050 with deep, rapid, and sustained global emissions reductions so we can get back on track. What that means, Chalo, is that industrial production as it is now, dependent on using all of these gases and so on, will take us to a position when we are pouring these gas emissions into the environment, will take us to a very difficult situation. One of the things that a small country like Trinidad and Tobago, which is dependent, as everybody knows, on the production of the chemicals, the production of gases, etc., is that our small economies are now following the pattern that was set 200, 300 years ago by the industrial countries to become developed, to reach the stage where we are producing all kinds of materials using the dangerous gases. And of course, countries like ours may be saying, well, look, these countries have done it for 300 years. We have no other option but to pursue, for instance, to bring it home. If Trinidad and Tobago were to say, look, we are leaving all of the petroleum and the gases in the ground because we don't want to despoil the atmosphere anymore than it is being done now. Then what happens to a country like Trinidad and Tobago in terms of earning revenue? One of the solutions to that kind of thing has been for the developed industrial world not only to limit their production of industrial goods, but rather to assist the small countries in terms which have to turn away ultimately and inevitably from producing industrial gases to go into the air. What is going to become of those countries? And therefore the developed countries have taken on the responsibility which they have not fulfilled in terms of uh, pouring billions of dollars, which they promised to do into the atmosphere, sorry, into these developing countries. But that has not been happening. The promises have been made at international conferences, and soon as those countries, so those leaders return home, they forget about the small developing countries. So to continue with the release, the small states are saying in its written statement to the ICJ on the obligations of states in respect of climate change, the Republic of Palau, chair of the SIDS countries, presented clear evidence of the devastating impacts of rising temperatures. Data showed a significant worrying warming trend above 30 degrees Celsius in Palau's waters, which is causing harm to Palau's reef ecosystem, including coral bleaching. Remember, Chalo, a couple, 2 weeks ago, we had,
Yeah, just about that. Yeah, and
yeah,
that's yeah, that definitely just came to mind as we were talking about it because as we the water is warming up. I remember the ladies was actually talking about that. She talked about the bleaching of the
yes,
corals and the killing of the coral reefs, like, and how that is so vital
right,
for
right,
the fish habitats because the fish
absolutely.
have nowhere to live to produce, and that means ultimately no fish.
Yeah, yeah, and of course, it when it gets to the that stage, it's going to rob a whole lot of people of jobs
And that
who
is it.
do the boat rides and a number of other things.
Yes.
So the concern is great. Going back to the release, sea level rise is apparent with high-end season level rise scenarios 2 meters, 2.5 meters, showing that large portions of several of Palawan states could be underwater by 2100. Underwater. Not Tony Fraser and Charles saying that, but rather the SIDS countries, the AOSIS countries. The number of hot days above 90 degrees Fahrenheit, 32 degrees Celsius, has increased. This is an important stat. The number of hot days above 90 degrees Fahrenheit, 32 degrees Celsius, has increased from an average of 46 days per year from 1952 to 1961 to 100 days per year. In 2009, in the period 2009 to 2018, posing a lethal risk to vulnerable communities. This is why AOSIS continues to call on countries to urgently submit their enhanced nationally determined contributions that are fully aligned with a 1.5% uh, Celsius pathway. In other words, they have to do what is required to limit the amount of gases being turned loose in the atmosphere. Time is running out. We need strong leaders to demonstrate the necessary political will and put forth the highest ambitions powered by feasible plans for effective implementation. By establishing a common understanding of international obligations, the ICJ advisory opinion can make clear that countries' duties to live up to their commitments are irrefutable. The point being made there, Charlo, is that these are advisory opinions which are going to be released tomorrow afternoon. They cannot compel state Y or X or A or B or C to do what they advocate. But it's important that these statements be made. As our listeners and yourself may know, that some of the industrial countries leading the way in Europe and the United States, North America, have bluntly refused to do anything to. They believe it's all a hoax. And in fact, when Donald Trump came back into the
Yes.
presidency, the initiatives that were taken by the former government have all been put asunder, as it were. And
Yeah.
he once again, there is a major pipeline that is running through the Amerindian country, and he is sure that they are not going to do anything about it. So those people are in a difficult situation.
I think that that is the problem that we are facing, and that is the main crux of the problem, because if the larger states are only giving lip service to all of this, they come, they listen, but then they go back and they do the same thing all over. You talked about the fact that, excuse me, that they promise funding. I remember not too long ago, and just this morning, I was actually using a quote from Mia Motley, one of the conferences that she went to. I think is
Yeah.
in Moscow or somewhere, those places earlier on this year. And she was talking about that, that soon enough we won't have food, we won't have fish, we won't have this, we won't have that. And those countries who are pledging support need to stop just saying that. If they they need to do what they say they are doing.
Yeah. Yeah, the figures are in there. Billions of tens of billions of dollars have been promised over the period of time, and very little of those promises have been met. So
Yeah.
that the industrial countries are not helping the situation at all.
I was
Continue.
I was
Sorry, go ahead, Chalu.
Sorry about that, Tony. Somewhere along I was watching, as you mentioned, Indonesia the other day, about and we in the Caribbean, we are suffering from all that the coastal erosion and that sort of thing, because of the climate change, and um, places are just losing their space. Where they had land, there's only water now, and all those different kinds of things are
Um,
taking place. And when those kinds of changes take place, I mean, everything changes.
hmm
You
hmm
know.
You talk about places that were land previously and now water covers them. The late, when he was alive, composer the Calypsonian, who is from the deep south of the country, Erin, somewhere around there, he talked to me in an interview, said there were places that he played as a little boy with his friends.
Hmm.
They are now seawater covered,
Yeah,
so that it's happening, and it's happening in a real situation.
yeah.
Now,
So
think about Port of Spain, so that if there are listeners and viewers who may think that this is an international problem and it has nothing to do with us, think about our waterfront in Port of Spain. It is almost at sea level, perhaps a little bit above sea level. If those waters start rising in those areas, the whole of Port of Spain will be
that is
covered.
it.
Yeah, it
That's
will
it.
be running up Charlotte Street, Frederick Street, Henry Street, etc., right up to the Savannah, which is on a little bit of mound. And if you go a little bit further beyond the Savannah, perhaps Cascade and St. Anne's and those areas might survive, but the capital city will be flushed with water. A country like Guyana, for instance, which has what they call a sea wall, because the capital city is under the seawater level. They have built sea walls to break the water, stop the water from coming in. But if this thing gets worse, they will have to build many, many, many more sea walls
and
at
and
different
and can they
times.
really sustain, and for how long? you know
Yes, it's not
that,
sustainable.
that is
It's
it.
not
And
sustainable.
even I mean, when we hear about Atlantis and all those things, those
Mhm.
we have seen, even right in the US, there are a number of places that were there that are now underwater.
Yeah, 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 yeah. So that the threat is real. It is not something that is esoteric and related to some fiction of a scientist. It's real. It has started happening. There are countries which have already experienced a serious inundation of seawater into their towns and cities and so on. And some of those areas, a number of those areas, remain under seawater. So just to finish up the release from the small island states, the Alliance of Small Island States, it says AOSIS, sorry, would like to salute all of the SIDS climate champions. That's the small island developing states. who have led us to this moment. Your unwavering strength speaks to the extraordinary resilience of our people. We hope the world will follow our lead and match this moment with the courage and moral purpose it requires. It often takes, for instance, developing countries which are not using any of the natural features of energy. We in the Caribbean, we have the wind and the sun and the sea, to use the sea in a productive kind of way. Um, at the airport at Piaco, there is an artificial, well, it's not so much artificial, it is using the rays of the sun to generate electricity power, and so on. And increasingly, those natural means of generating power, which will not do harm to the environment, the atmosphere, more and more. The world will have to turn to those kinds of possibilities.
Yeah,
It's
but
a,
like
it's a
the solar
serious threat,
farms and that thing is talking about.
absolute threat. Some time ago, there was an interview on BBC television, and the BBC uh, host was attempting to put the president of Guyana, President Ali, under some pressure because Guyana is now utilizing the natural resources in the ground. And he was, that is the British BBC presenter, was being critical of the Guyanese government, President Irfan, from using the natural resources for development and for revenue, which the country uh, has been desperate for decades. So, and of course, President Ali responded in kind to the effect by saying, well, we are simply following you fellows, you fellows who were industrializing the world from 400 years ago, and therefore you have developed this capacity and richness and so on. Why should we not use it? A legitimate question. However, the reality is that pursuing it, even by small developing countries, uh, will cause increasing damage to the atmosphere.
Yeah,
And it's fine to say that we are following you, but that does not stop the small countries from putting excess gases into the atmosphere. But then again, what should they do? How should their people survive? How should they live in difficult circumstances when there are resources there to be used for the purposes of development? And because the situation has reached the stage that it has reached to at this point in time, there are concerns about them using it, but nobody's, being critical of nobody that is outside of the authorities and outside of the scientists. Being critical of the United States when President Trump came back into office, he opened up the door again for the industrial uses of the materials in the ground, and of course, that will create havoc with the atmosphere. The same thing for those Western European countries, Germany and France and Spain and so on and so on. England, the United Kingdom, they're continuing to use their industrial gases, and without let or hindrance, and compounding the situation by not assisting the developing countries who simply have to use in the arguments of those developing countries what they have to create wealth and sustain life on their islands. That's the reality.
as also today, and I was looking at something the other because with the whole climate change, what we are seeing is is more stronger and more frequent storms taking place too, and these tropical storms, they have increased in intensity, and there's a whole lot of unpredictability. And I was seeing a little documentary. I can't remember exactly where I was seeing it, and the persons were talking about boats when these things happen and the damage and what it's doing to what to them to try and stay in business. And
Yeah.
how one person was actually saying to, and because of all of that and how the frequency and the damage that is taking place, some of them cannot even get or even afford insurance for the boats.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and you're right about the kind of destruction that has been caused already. And these scientists are not dreaming, they're people who deal with reality. And therefore, their warnings have to be taken very seriously. The United Nations has, in fact, taken them very seriously by hiring the scientists to study the situation with regard to environmental damage that has already taken place and has gone very far in terms of the threat to the world and especially small nations. Think of it, Charles, as you indicated a moment ago, the hurricanes which have come through the Caribbean over the last 5, 6 years and done so much damage to countries. Easily, you think about Dominica, you talk about the US Virgin Islands, the UK Virgin Islands, and so on. And many countries in the region have experienced severe hurricane damage over the near time period of the last few years, and that is only set to increase. We are fortunate here in Trinidad and Tobago in that we are down at the bottom of the chain, and it seems that the weather patterns, for the present at least, when those winds come across the ocean, the Atlantic Ocean, they go upwards just before hitting Trinidad and Tobago. So we have been fortunate, but I am sure that we cannot continue to
Yes.
live
For how much
on the
longer?
on the notion that God is a Trini and God will always send these massive, environmental disasters up the Caribbean, Eastern Caribbean, and indeed, the Americans should take note because increasingly those storms, those hurricanes are not stopping within the Caribbean, but they're going into Florida and right up the coast, and therefore the damage is great in the United States. And they cannot continue pushing the problem forward uh, in a prolonged kind of manner. It will not last. They too will have to experience the kind of damage that the Caribbean has had for decades.
Work in progress.
Yeah. So, Chalo, I think unless there is anybody who wants to discuss anything, as we indicated at the top of the program, we had a guest, but the guest was unable to make it at this point in time. And we are going to seek to rearrange for him to come to talk to us. A very important guest, Earl Lovelace, one of the major novelists of Trinidad and Tobago and the Caribbean. His many works which have gone forward, the most famous of them being The Dragon Can Dance. I don't know if you've read it, Charo, but
Actually, no, I have not.
yeah, it's a story about life on the hill, Laventille Hills. It's a story about people living difficult lives, people contesting with colonial authorities and colonial lifestyles, and Bajonism in the area, and a whole lot of things. Difficult lives for young people, especially young women. And there is a fellow called Pariag, as we know, the African people command the greatest portions of the Lavendale Hill. But there are other people. And the story is told about a fellow called Pariag who came from the country and is settling into the Lavendale Hills. And you know what, Chalo? He's looking to play Big Mouse too.
Yeah.
Dragon Mouse, of course, we know. He's playing a big dragon mask while he's selling his delicacies during the day. Very interesting story. We're going to talk much more about it when we get to the author on the air. So, Chalo, that's it for the time being. Tomorrow, we are seeking to have something that can be interesting about not only the SIDS question, we're attempting to get somebody to talk about that because by then we would know what the ICJ has ruled in this matter, so we can, pay attention to what the ICJ says or advises the industrial world in particular to do about their gas emissions. We're going to talk about that, and we're also seeking to have an interesting aspect of media life in Trinidad and Tobago discussed. As you may very well know, Chalo, a journalist, a well-known journalist in the environment, recently passed, and we're going to talk about circumstances of that. Not the particular journalist. We are not going into any detail about what transpired in those circumstances, but we're really talking about programs which deal with assistance for people who work in the media who are stressed out most of the times. Chalo, is a very stressful job. It's not only for the reporters and journalists, but people like yourself.
It really is, yes.
Yeah. So we're going to seek to talk about that. We've spoken with Matt and the Media Association of Trinidad and Tobago, and we expect to have some people here to talk about that tomorrow. And on Thursday, we have confirmed with another significant Trinidad and Tobago artist, that's Brother Valentino, and he's coming on Thursday, and we're going to talk with him about his life in Calypso and so on, and also to play some of his music, Chalo. We have some of that listed.
Yes, I got it.
Yeah. So I think we have to wrap it up at this point in time, and we'll come back tomorrow with another program for you.
Okay, thank you very much, Tony, and people. Thank you very much for listening and being here on the Drive Time Exchange. Cutting out a little short today, but that's all right. All right.
They could call a big strike, so I tell them sweet.
Coming up at 6 o'clock today, look out for David Muhammad with the Black Agenda.
Small look up all in sweet, sweet Trinidad. Rockabouts are feeling glad. When I'm dead, please bury me in the center of the city. Yeah, there we go. We got we big oil field just in South. We have all kind of things to talk about, no regret. You just have to get up and get. And anytime things are a little bad, man, you have a garden in your backyard, and no doubt the food almost